Hello and welcome back to the Ground Up Advanced Flight Tutorials. Thank you very much for joining me in this lesson, and today we are going to be doing our first night flight. Now we're just going to be doing a simple circuit to start with. Today's video is going to be all about circuits. Let me actually get this aircraft's brakes on, which is a little bit difficult to see, but I know where the brakes are. Well, I don't, so I'm going to actually bring that up, get the parking brakes pulled correctly. There we go. I can bring that off. So we're going to be looking at our first night flight. We're just going to do a circuit first around Echo Golf November X-Ray, as we always do. So that's where we did our first circuit. That's where we've done all of our training. So this is the best place for us to be able to do our circuit. And this is only what this is to get you used to flying an aircraft at night and what changes at night, because at night things look different. An airport looks different. You can't see things as well. Your visual references are different. You need to be looking at lights as opposed to actual objects. So there is a lot of differences. Now, this isn't quite late at night yet. This is about, what, 9:30, maybe? About that sort of time. Maybe even slightly later, maybe about 10:30 in the United Kingdom. So that's what we're looking at here. In fact, I don't have a clock here, do I? No. Let's switch that over. So make sure you guys are on runway 09 for this leg. So we're going to be taking off from runway 09. We're going to be taking off. We're going to be turning. We're going to do a right-hand circuit, just like we did the first time we ever did a circuit around this airport. And then we're going to actually use the all our instruments. We're going to be using, or a bunch of our instruments. We're going to be using the ILS. We're probably not going to be using the VOR today, so we're going to be using an ILS today, and we're going to be using the ADF today, as well as our DME system in this aircraft. So this is the PA-28 Arrow 3. This is what we've been using for the majority of the lessons. If you haven't got this aircraft, I would highly recommend picking this aircraft up. And this is now in X-Plane 11. Before I continue, if you really do enjoy these videos, please don't forget to be liking the video, but also, more importantly, don't forget to consider at least supporting me on Patreon. That's www.patreon.com/ecgadget. $5 rewards and above gets you access to the Patreon exclusive, and more importantly for this, the Flight Sim Tutorials exclusive channel on my Discord server, where you guys can ask me all sorts of questions, and I'm happy to describe this things to you and explain things to you with references to diagrams, images, so on and so forth. And plus, it also gives me an idea of what you guys want to see next. So I've got a few patrons on there who actually do get to know what I'm doing next, and then they will give me suggestions as to what they'd like to see next. So with that all being said and done, make sure you guys are ready to go, and we're going to set this aircraft up, and then I will give you the flight briefing and we will take off. Okay, so whilst we're not in the air, let's actually get some lighting in this. Here we go. We'll shed some light on the situation so we can actually see our aircraft and what we need to do. So we're going to first of all ensure that we tune in on the nav1. So in this case it's using this GNS 530 here from Garmin. We're going to tune in on the localizer 109.35. So if you haven't done so, if you haven't done that yet, you can see it needs to be 109.35. So to tune that in, you can just press that. Flick this over to 109, use that to flick to 35, and then swap it over. Obviously now I've got them on both, but it doesn't really matter. I'm actually going to switch this over to 115.7 just in case. Not that we're going to need it. And on nav2 we don't really need anything, but you can probably tune in 109.35 on that as well, just to be certain of it. Make sure that this is then set to 090 on the course, because that's probably what you want, or well, 089 is probably the one you need. And then also we're going to ensure that this is tuned to 393. So make sure that's set up to 393, and make sure this is in not off, not ANT, but ADF mode. Make sure it's in ADF mode. You'll see our ADF needle will move to point towards the NDB, which is currently behind us, but we are going to be using that as always. Nope, let's do that. There we go. With this, we want this to be set in remote, like so that way we have the information about the airport displayed, so it will give us our speed, how long it's going to take us to get there, and our distance away. And also we are going to be needing this, so if we're going to mode, we're going to be using some sort of timer, so we'll probably be using a timer today as we go. Anything else that needs to be on? It's not that warm. Oh, sorry, it's not that cold outside, but I am going to switch on pitot heat anyway. The fuel pump needs to be on whilst we're taking off, and then we can switch it off afterwards. That looks pretty good. Everything else looks good around the aircraft. Make sure this is set to nav 1. If you want to use the autopilot system, you can. Make sure that's also set to nav 1 though. So ensure that there is set to nav 1. And of course, if you don't understand what I'm showing you, and you don't understand this aircraft, and you don't understand what we're about to do with terms of flying an ILS or flying different legs, please do go watch the earlier lessons. They explain everything. That's all out the way. Let's get ourselves taken off and ready to go. Right, how do I want to do this? I want to give you guys a pretty good view, but I don't want my own depth perception to be kind of messed up. That should do quite nicely. Right, mixture can go full rich. There we go. Flaps, one stage down. You can always double check them. Yep, they're definitely down. Good, all the lights are on. Strobe lights are on, navigation lights are on, beacon light is on, landing lights are on. Here we go. Parking brake released. Remember, I'm not used to this aircraft in X-Plane 11, so this is going to be kind of interesting. There's the rotate speed. Rotate. Positive rate. Gear up. And as we correct for this, flaps in. 500 foot per minute climb. Trimming for trying to trim for a 90 knot climb, about 500 feet per minute, which is what we want. Which this aircraft, trimming this aircraft is a little bit harder initially. But there we have it, we are now up. Now I'm going to leave the dome lights on, even though I don't particularly like them. And the reason I'm going to leave them on is just so you guys can actually see everything that's out here. Now, we don't have to worry about this, but if you want, you can swap that to on if you want, but that doesn't really matter. There's our 500 foot per minute climb. You just saw that these have just gone over. There we go. You can see they're swapping around. That's as we're going over all the localizer and all the points around it, and it's getting confused between the back course, so on and so forth. Right, we're going to climb to 1,500 feet, and then we're going to begin our first turn. And if you have a look around now, let me just see if I can not do that. I keep doing that. If you have a look around now, maybe I'll be able to show you guys. Yeah, you can just see. It's different. It's very different at night. Very, very different at night. Again, we're still managing around 95 knots. Let's do that again. 90 to 95 knots, and we're almost at 1,500 feet. So now it's time for us to begin our first turn. So we're going to turn to a heading of 180. Whilst maintaining, now this is important, maintain the vertical speed. There we go. Nice gentle turn. Maintain that vertical speed, because we're continuing the climb, as you can see. We are continuing the climb. And don't forget that when you come up to 180, you want a gentle rollout. There's 180, gentle There we go. And now we're on a new heading of 180. Now we're going to continue along this for a couple of moments. Not even a couple of moments. We're only going to do this for a short period of time once again. And we're climbing to 2,500 feet today. So we're going to level off at 2,500 feet. You can see the glide slope has now gone. We can have a quick look over on this direction. There's the airport. So we'll continue doing this. Very, very simple. You've just got to remember that you can't see things anymore outside. It's much harder to see things. So you can't use visual references, and you've got to focus more on your instruments. You've got to focus more on lighting, and more importantly, you've got to really have more confidence in yourself and what you are going to do. Right. Let's turn the aircraft once again. And now we've reached 2,500 feet. Whilst I'm turning the aircraft, I'm also going to be bringing that vertical speed down to 0 using the trim. And there we go. Perfect. And now we're going to roll out on 270. Awesome. Now, at this point, if you want, you can use an autopilot. Oops, I've gone slightly too far. You can use an autopilot, but I would prefer that you do not. See, I'm actually at 280 at the moment. Let's get this back on course immediately. And we're roughly at 2,500 feet, which is pretty good for us. Nothing to worry about there. Right. Now the reason I prefer you not to use the autopilot system is because I would rather that you do this manually, so you can understand this manually. Now what we're going to do is we're going to wait until we are clear of the airport. So there's the airport. Now we need to end up clear of the threshold. And once we're clear of the threshold, then we're going to start a timer for 5 minutes. In fact, this time we're not going to even do 5 minutes. Last time I think we did 5 minutes. This time we're going to do 3. Also, this aircraft has been not doing exactly what I wanted it to do. So we need to ensure that we get ourselves back on course to 270 properly. There we go. And again, it's different at night. Your perception of things is different at night. Because now you can't really see the ground below you. You see, you can't see the ground below you, but you can see cars. And if a car is moving at a slightly different angle to you, it does confuse. It will confuse you. So you just need to be aware of things like that. Let's trim up slightly, just to ensure that we're not losing too much altitude as we increase speed, which is pretty good. I'm not going to be reducing propeller RPM or mixtures or anything like that today. We're not going to be doing that. We'll do that when we get to a full solo flight. I don't want to be confusing you guys with any of that stuff. Right, we're well past that threshold, so let's go for a 3-minute timer. So we'll start that for 3 minutes. We're just going to fly in this direction for 3 minutes, ensuring that we're still traveling in the right direction, and just understanding that all our instruments are very, very important at this moment in time. show you an outside shot of the aircraft. And there's the airport right there that we're going to be landing at. Go back inside. And you can see the aircraft is turning slightly to the left. We're not in full power. Again, that's something to remember. We're not in full power. We are descending ever so slowly though, so we're going to correct for that. We're now 80 foot below, so we'll make a correction for that. There we go, and we've got to keep an eye on that timer, so we've got 2 minutes to go. 2 minutes on the timer. There we go, we're now climbing very slowly once again. There comes the localizer and glide slope again, so the localizer's alive. And if you look at that ADF needle now you can see that we're past the locator in dB. Now this is good for us. So this was something that I wanted to ensure. We wanted to make sure we are definitely going to be past the locator NDB, and I am assuming that we're going to end up with it being around 150 by the time we start our turning. That's what I wanted it to be. But I'm not sure if that's going to happen, given that we end up slightly off course. So we're closer to it. In fact, it should happen. But again, I am not using my elevators to control the altitude of this aircraft. This aircraft is trimmed for this speed and this altitude. This is something that I taught many lessons ago. And I'm hoping that you guys are used to it, so you don't need to use an autopilot on an aircraft like this. Yes, you are going to constantly have to be adjusting the trim every few minutes, but it's much easier than holding a stick. My hands are completely off the controls. As a matter of fact, I could be browsing the web on my mobile phone right now if I really wanted to. Alright, we're coming up on the time, and it is coming up to 150, so there we go. So we're going to stop that now because we don't need it. We're going to get rid of that, and we're just going to wait for that to be 150 before we turn in. There's 150. We're now going to turn in to a heading of 0. Now important here is again to ensure that the vertical speed does not go up nor down. There we go. Doesn't have to be a very steep turn, just a smooth one. And again, don't forget to roll out at half angle. And there's the rollout. And as you can see, I gained all of 20 feet there. 20 to 40 feet. Oop, didn't roll out properly. I did it again. I'm not used to the X-Plane 11 flight model as much as I'd like to be. So what are we going to be doing now? Well, we're going to maintain 2,500 feet, but then we're going to turn in onto the localizer. So maintain 2,500 feet, but turning into the localizer. Which we're doing now. I may not have this right, but that's what that ADF needle is going to be for. And because there's no reference, there you go, there's the airport. You can see what's happened here. This is actually a good example. Because I had no reference to anything outside, I wasn't sure what was happening. Yeah, understood. And also, that's another thing, that's a good point. This is actually not correct. No, it's fairly correct, Right, and now all we've got to do is line up. Now you can see that the glide slope has now come alive, So it's time for us to actually sort ourselves out on that glide slope too. So we're going to reduce power and begin a descent. And here comes the descent. Not as steep as that. Nowhere near as steep as that. Okay, we're now down below 100 knots, one stage of flaps, and the gear can come out. And there we go, now we're on the localizer. Now we're happy. Right, and again we're going to trim. Right, we've got 80 knots here. So we're going to see if we can hold an 80 knot descent. Or roughly an 80 knot descent, because that looks pretty good. Now again, we've got to really be wary because, and I think one of my patrons actually mentioned this, Chris, depth perception. Depth perception can go very strange when you're flying an aircraft like this. For example, you saw there how easy it was for me to overshoot my final corner. It just came up on me very quickly because I couldn't see the ground, so I had no reference points on the ground. However, when it comes to depth perception when landing at an airport, you kind of want to make sure that you've got this right. This is actually only my second landing in this aircraft as I'm doing. Yeah, this isn't quite aligned, is it? So I'm actually fixing something else. Something I shouldn't be fixing, I'm fixing now. There we go. And we've just gone past the locator. You just saw that ADF needle sort that out, and you can see we're 3 minutes to landing, 3.5 nautical miles away. We're slightly high, so we're going to bring that trim down, reduce the power a little bit, just to bring ourselves back onto the glide. And we're slightly, just ever so slightly to the left of the runway, so we're going to fix that too. You don't want anything to be very sharp, very sudden. So you can see I've just brought the descent down to 500 foot per minute, which is more than required for an 80 knot descent. And that will bring the glide to us nicely, as opposed to just dipping the aircraft down and then pulling up again. Just increasing momentarily to 600. There we go. Glide coming back to us very nicely. We're now pretty much bang on the center line. Bring that back to about a 400 foot per minute rate of descent, which is what we want roughly for this speed. And now we can go forget the trim and just do this ourselves. We're roughly where we need to be, so now we just got to fly it in ourselves. And that's exactly what we're going to do. And this is where it's important, make sure you follow the lights, follow the runway. You can actually see a tree right there. I'm not sure whether you guys can see that tree, but if the lighting of the runway was not there, that approach lighting, you wouldn't be able to see that tree. So if you manage to mess up the approach, you'd be in a bit of a pickle. You really would. But let's see if we can land this aircraft very nicely now. So now we're going to slow down to landing speed, which here we go. Again, not making sudden movements on the stick. No sudden changes. Everything's going to be as smooth as you can possibly get. Maintaining, keeping that center line. You can see the threshold lights. You see the displaced threshold. You see the threshold. And now your landing lights are helping light up the runway. And just bring the aircraft down nice and slowly. Not quite on the center line this time. And there you have it. Down on the runway. Reduce power to idle. Flaps can now go in. And maximum braking. I tell you what, I'll actually take this turn off. Even though this wasn't the best one to take, I'm going to actually take that turn off. And there you have it. Now, give it a little bit more throttle. Don't want to stall the engine. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to go along this way. And we're going to do a little bit of maneuvering around the airport too, so that you can actually get used to the actual lighting, the lighting system at the airport. Right, we'll bring that mixture down. Like so. I suppose fuel pump can now go off. I left it on through the whole thing, but that's okay. That can go off. That can go off. There we go. Ignore the chirping of the brakes. Pop in here. And we're just going to go up to just somewhere and just park our aircraft. And that brings me very nicely to the end of probably one of the shorter tutorials lately. But I think one that's very, very important to have a look at, to get an understanding of night solo flying and how things are different. And even for me, who, you know, I fly mostly in the day, switching over to night flying is different for me too. It is definitely different for me. So thank you very much for watching. Please remember to hit the like button if you like this video, subscribe to the channel for more videos on the ground up advanced flight tutorials. Leave a comment in the comments box below letting me know what you think. Again, don't forget to support me on Patreon, www.patreon.com/ecgadget. I would really appreciate your support. It would help me out a huge amount. If you're not watching this on Twitch, do consider following me on Twitch too, twitch.tv/ecgadget, and you can catch me on social media. That's Instagram and Twitter. I was just looking at this. Instagram and Twitter, ecgadgetlp. That is all from me, I believe, and I'll see you guys next time in the ground up advanced flight tutorials.